Our next reader hails from the den of the Southern Rebellion, Charleston, South Carolina. Influenced by the duality that exists there, he made some interesting decisions, starting with attending the college founded after a slave revolt, which had also had the dubious distinction of producing the two cadets who fired the first shots of the Civil War. An English major as an undergrad, he decided to join the Marine Corps, in which he spent almost a decade, earning an MA in English literature in the process. He loves telling stories, especially stories about those seminal moments that explain the duality that exists in most people. Put your hands together for Norman Doucet.
That's good. Yeah. All right. Ooh, sorry.
Wait till everyone sits down.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Andrew and Eden. As Andrew said, I was in the Marine Corps, and I think everyone has a story about September 11th and the aftermath of it. I have a story about September 11th, part of which I will share here. But this story is really about the night before I was a part of the invasion of Afghanistan. So it's short. So here we go. Precarious. That was my mood the night of November 24th, 2001, as I sat at the desk in the stateroom of the ship. I had called home for only 4 days. As I hunkered over the table, squinting my eyes to focus on the myriad operations plans, maps, and communications protocols, and the red light mandated ship-wide, my mind briefly wandered. Only 6 days ago, I had been in California, Camp Pendleton to be exact, recovering from not only the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks, but also the suicide of a colleague and a friend. I had returned to Camp Pendleton in the wee hours of September 11th after escorting my friend's body to Mobile, Alabama for his funeral. I had held his mother and sister in my arms as they wept, decrying the Marine Corps for killing their son and brother, a notion that I rightly chalked up to anger spurred on by grief. I had inspected his remains, as the Marine Corps mandated, to ensure that his uniform and decorations on them were in proper order. Regulations must be followed for Marines, even in death, I thought, as the smell of his chemically infused body combined with the cosmetic adjustments that made his face recognizable but not familiar almost overwhelmed me. I had seen remains before, of course, so it wasn't that. I was the last person to see him alive, and he was the second person whom I had unknowingly said goodbye to for the last time. In both instances, they seemed perfectly fine, and the very next day they were gone. There was a feeling of failure associated with it, and it reminded me that sometimes human beings are utterly helpless to stop tragedies. It was this feeling that had stuck with me since I was awakened to the news of the attacks. It was this feeling that had ripped my heart out as I handed my cell phone to one of my Navy corpsmen, who's a medic, as he frantically tried to call his mother, who worked as a secretary in Tower 2. It was this feeling that consumed me for a moment as he looked at me, wide-eyed, saying, "Can't reach her, sir. Do you think she's okay?" And it was this feeling that I put aside in favor of my duty to my Marines and my country when I took the phone from him, looked him in the eyes and said, "No. Based on the current intel, she and everyone in those buildings are probably dead or dying. You can't do anything for her. Focus on your job and you'll honor her memory." We had no idea of what was happening in those hours, days, and weeks after September 11th, but two things were certain. We were going to find who had done this, and we were going to kill the shit out of them. As Marines, we were going to be the instrument of retribution for our nation. We sprung into action that day, taking our tanks and amphibious vehicles, rifles, machine guns, and Marines to do our particular job of blocking all access to Interstate 5, to isolate and therefore protect the cities of San Diego and Los Angeles, but more importantly, to help secure the San Onofre nuclear power plant that lay between the two cities. That mission lasted for a week or more, and with it, the dullness of military life crept upon us. We began to believe that we would begin to play the hurry up and wait game, but astonishingly to us, events progressed at a very rapid pace. My unit was sent to the Desert of 29 Palms to conduct combat training. Pardon me. and we received a numbered tasking order, which essentially placed us on call to board airplanes or ships on 48 hours notice to go wherever we were needed. But then, as more time passed, it became clear that units already deployed were the ones who would see action first. That is, until I was called into my commander's office one day in late October. I was informed that the unit deployed from our base needed more men. I was told that there was going to be a fight and that the commander was giving me a chance to volunteer. And my volunteering would mean my 255-man reinforced rifle company would also be volunteering. He didn't even have to finish his sentence. As I sat at the desk in the red light, that feeling began to grip me. Precarious, not securely held in position. Precarious, dependent on chance. Precarious, uncertain. I had volunteered the lives of 255 men to join a fight that wasn't originally ours. They had all cheered and yelled a big, "Hoorah, get some!" when I told them we had been the first choice of all rifle companies on Camp Pendleton to reinforce our brothers in 1st Battalion. But had my pride gotten the best of me in my commander's office that day? I mean, being called in and given that kind of news is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it means you're highly regarded, but on the other hand, it was unthinkable to refuse, even if I had wanted to. If one of my Marines died in the forthcoming hours, days, or weeks, which was highly likely, what would I write in my letters to their families? That I was a 29-year-old kid filled with ambition and arrogance who had brought their son to Afghanistan to get shot, blown up, or worse? I remember that in the depths of despair, survivors often blame the leaders for their children's deaths. The ship's captain came over the 1MC, the shipwide intercom. He said it was time, wished us Godspeed, and was replaced by AC/DCs for those about to rock. I got up from my desk, put on my gear, and headed to the helicopter bay to address my Marines. Being an officer, especially a commanding officer, is a lonely job. One can get lost in useless things like doubt and fear, the great paralyzing agents of combat leadership. As I walked the red-lit passageways with the other commanders, no words were spoken. We were all in our own heads and likely thinking the same things. My Marines were already in formation when I arrived. Bathed in the red light, they looked like a singular supernatural mass without beginning or end. My words were short, a little testosterone heavy and corny, but Marines, especially those about to go into danger, like those types of speeches. And I quote, I remember saying this: "Unleash the beast and let slip the dogs of war, gentlemen. Let's go to work." I stood at the bottom of the ladder that would lead them to the helicopters waiting on the deck of the ship to fly us the 435 miles, farther than any Marines in history, into chaos. I touched the arm of everyone who climbed by, looking them in the eyes and nodding. I noticed something that sticks with me to this day. I saw no fear. Excuse me. Wow, did you think that was going to happen? No doubt in any of their eyes. HN3 Wilson got to the bottom of the ladder, and as I touched his arm, excuse me, sorry, I did not think this was going to happen. HN3 Wilson got to the bottom of the ladder, and as he touched my arm, he reached out and touched mine. "Sir," he said, "have no doubt I'll do my job. My mom is watching, and so are you. Thank you."